Hello once again, and welcome to another edition of the SaskAgToday.com Roundtable. I'm joined by 620 CKRM Regina Agri-News Director Ryan Young, as well as the Chief Agricultural Editor for SaskAgToday.com, Kevin Hirsch. I'm Doug Falconer, Agriculture Director at GX94 Yorkton. And first of all, we wanted to talk about the rain that fell across much of Saskatchewan here this week. Kevin, of course, you're in southwestern Saskatchewan. It sounds like you didn't get any of that rain.
No, it didn't rain here, and people would certainly welcome it. In some cases, subsoil moisture is still pretty good, but the top is certainly getting dry. People would love to have had the rain that East Central and Southeast Saskatchewan had. Is my understanding that sort of the Davidson Moose Jaw area is sort of the edge of it, and that you got more and more rain as you got into the southeast corner of the province. But so it covered a big area, but it missed a lot of Saskatchewan that would have welcomed it.
Ryan, how about in Regina area? Much rain there?
Yeah, we got a kind of a constant rain throughout the day and even in starting the previous night going into Thursday and then ending sometime in the evening. So it was kind of around Grand Coulee where I live. It started there and then rained in Regina. And then for Thursday's country cookout, we were up at the Dysart area. It was still raining even going up there. So we had a pretty constant rain. It was kind of I guess, a even flow, shall we say. How about over in Yorkton?
Yorkton, last report I had as of midnight Friday morning was 14.7 millimeters of rain. We did anecdotally, we got a text in on Friday morning from a farmer down by Langbank, which I think is a little south and east of Regina, that he'd had 5 inches of rain at that point this morning. So I understand that direction. And of course, into western Manitoba, they got heavier amounts of rain. So here in Yorkton, we probably wouldn't have minded a little bit more, but I mean, I guess the people will be able to get back out into the fields a little quicker than they will in that southeastern corner of the province. As for spring seeding itself, last week here we saw that Manitoba's crop report jumped from 8% complete to 32% complete, and Saskatchewan jumped from 18% complete to 49% complete. What are your thoughts on those numbers, Kevin?
Well, for Saskatchewan, that's very fast seeding progress. Just goes to show what happens when it's dry and relatively little precipitation up until this week. The ones to watch now will be that southeast corner and how long it takes for them to get back in the field. They're likely to lag progress a fair bit. Here in the southwest, where we missed the rain, we still had some wind that caused some problems getting out with the sprayer, but I think the numbers say 76% complete. Around me, most people are in the final stages of seeding, if not complete. So there's quite a variation from one part of the province to the other.
Regina, of course, has their CKRM country cookouts. And Ryan, you took a couple of this week. How our seeding progress is going in those areas?
Seeing a lot more tractors out and about seeding as we continue, obviously. And some of the farmers that I talked to, they said that they were about halfway done seeding. Or uh, there's one instance with the cookout, we were in the Willowbrook areas. So from the winner, Terry Hall, I was talking to, he said some producers around there haven't really gotten going other than the bigger farmers. So like Kevin said, it's kind of variable around the province, but around Regina here, typically, a lot of guys have made pretty good progress.
Yeah, that's kind of interesting. Of course, GX94 Supper in the Field. Last week we went south of Grayson, and our winner there hadn't even started yet. But this week we went northwest of Roblin, which is, of course, pretty much straight east of Yorkton. And our winner there said he was half done. So obviously a lot got done in that 1 week period of time from Wednesday to Wednesday. Something else that happened this week as well was on Monday. We heard the United States and China agreed to a 90-day tariff pause, and so they were going to be lowering some tariffs there. Kevin, your reaction to that?
Well, it does show that the tariffs are negotiable. They're not cast in stone. President Trump seems to be looking for deals and not waging an all-out war with never-ending tariffs, even against the main competitor, which is China. So showing some flexibility might take some negotiation back and forth, but a good signal for world trade and all of the ramifications, even for other countries. If the U.S. and China can iron out some of their major difficulties, there should be some hope for everyone.
We also saw on Tuesday cattle prices. The latest numbers came out from the Saskatchewan Ministry of Agriculture. Ryan, you had a chance to speak with Emily Schmidt once again on that.
Yeah, unfortunately, there wasn't a whole lot of numbers to kind of talk about for the feeder steer and heifers. There wasn't enough cattle sold to kind of get enough data from all the livestock yards. So, unfortunately, I don't really have prices to report on, except for Alberta fed steers and D2 and D3 cattle prices, which generally speaking, they were up once again compared to the prior week. So, that's kind of good to see, as well as the cattle futures. Both live cattle and other futures, they were kind of up on the week as well, continuing that trend. And one of the things that kind of stood out to me, speaking of which, was those futures rising on the strength of the U.S. Not allowing any more imports of Mexican cattle again due to New World screwworm and the concerns around that. So it's definitely something to keep an eye on in the days and weeks ahead, whether that changes or not.
And Kevin, there were reports this week that it's expected that the U.S. cattle herd will start to be built up again. Your reaction to that news?
When you see record prices like this, you have to think that the market will react and start rebuilding the herd. But it's the other thing that's interesting about rebuilding the herd is you're actually keeping cattle off of the meat market when you start retaining more heifers and keeping animals back and building the herd. So it doesn't lead to an immediate increase in the beef supply. In fact, it does the opposite. And as you start herd rebuilding, in the rebuilding phase over a year or two or three, it actually lessens the amount of beef on the market. And we're already scarce in North America, and that's why prices are so high. So it's difficult to believe, and you can never see the future, but you'd think that beef prices, the cattle prices, are going to have some strength for the foreseeable future.
Something else that happened on Tuesday this week was Prime Minister Mark Carney swore in his new cabinet, including the new Agriculture Minister, Heath MacDonald. Brian, have you ever heard of this guy before?
I haven't until that moment that it was announced. I did a quick Google search on him, and from what I could gather anyway, he was a provincial MLA for about 20 years. He worked in the economy, has a bit of a background around the economy and business. I believe he was a finance minister, if I'm not mistaken. I could be wrong on that fact, but has a lot of political experience as well as being on the House of Commons Agriculture Committee for a few years. So he's kind of got a little bit of an idea, I guess, on, agri policy and some of the issues facing farmers today across Canada. But it's kind of a surprise, really, from the farm groups that I talked to. They were kind of all expecting Cody Blois to keep that role because he only had it for a few weeks before the election was called. So to hear Heath MacDonald as the ag minister kind of threw everybody through a loop, so to speak. But they're kind of looking forward to getting to know Heath a little bit more and kind of reset that relationship between farmers and agriculture and Agri-Food Canada, and by extension, the federal government. So we'll see where that goes. And one other thing of note, too, was I didn't realize how popular Cody was in his brief time as ag minister until I talked to, the wheat growers and APAS and hearing from the grain growers of Canada how Cody really took the initiative and really took the time to, listen to producers. Not that any previous ag ministers didn't do that, but Cody just seemed, from the likes of it, or from the sounds of it rather, just really listened very well and kind of took that extra step. So all the best to Heath MacDonald, and we'll see where this relationship goes.
Kevin, your reaction to the news that Heath MacDonald is the new federal agriculture minister?
Like most people, the reaction was, "Who the hell is Heath MacDonald?" And Cody Blois, as Ryan said, made such a positive impact, or people had such positive reviews of his short time as agriculture minister, that it was a real surprise to see a relative unknown without any agriculture background other than being on the Commons Ag Committee for a few years, appointed to the role. So we've gone from, I would describe Lawrence MacAulay as a sort of a caretaker ag minister. He was ag minister. Then Marie Claude Bibeau of Quebec, who a smart lady. She learned the agriculture portfolio as she went along, no ag background, and then back to Lawrence MacAulay for a time, then to Cody Blois, also from Atlantic Canada, and then for whatever reason, geographic representation or whatever, a relative unknown thrust into the role. So he's got to meet a lot of people and do a lot of studying, and hopefully will get himself up to speed. But it would have been nice to see somebody from the West. It would have been nice to see somebody with an agriculture background.
Another item that came up this week was that there was two cattle died of anthrax in northwestern Saskatchewan. It was reported, and of course, they were taking measures on that ranch to prevent any further spread. That's something, Kevin, that we've see come up every once in a while. There's really not much you can do about it.
No, and there is a vaccine available, and it tends to manifest itself in either really wet or really dry years, as the spores last a long, long time, especially in saline soil conditions. So in areas where anthrax has reared its ugly head, there is sometimes a push to get a lot of cattle vaccinated just to have protection. But we see this come to the spotlight every now and then in the cattle industry. Anthrax appears here or there, and in the northwest part of Saskatchewan, it's actually been abnormally dry. So that is the condition, or one of the conditions that can bring about those anthrax spores coming to the surface and reinfecting.
And of course, it's Friday when we're recording this. And Ryan, you had a chance to speak with Adam Picallo from Ventum Financial in Winnipeg today to talk about grain and oilseed prices. What did he have to say about them for the past week here?
Well, from what I can tell you in my conversation with Adam here, I'm just going to pull up the numbers. And he mentioned that the July canola contract was down a little bit on the week overall. Just, I think when we were talking in early trading, it was about down $2 a ton on the week. But it was kind of up in day trading today. It closed at 702.70 a ton, which was up $8.30. So good on that. And then for the July Minneapolis wheat contract, it was pretty much down the whole way here. 20 and a quarter cents on the week and 6 3/4 cents in day trading today. So it closed at $5.73 and a quarter cents a bushel, which Adam said is kind of on the lower end of the contract. So not really good for wheat futures, but all right for canola. Talked about a couple of things. One was what we just talked about with the U.S. and China agreeing to a 90-day pause on the tariffs. So for Adam, he said that kind of confirms to him that grain movement will continue. So that's good. As well as when that announcement was made, we saw the stock market actually increase. The NASDAQ, the Dow, the TSX across the board, triple digit increases. Saw that on the commodity side as well. And then we also talked a little bit about the latest USDA WASDE report and some of the findings there. Don't remember, unfortunately, off the top of my head in terms of what the USDA has been saying for this time around, but that was something that he was keeping an eye on as well. And that's pretty much it. Given we're heading into a long weekend here, kind of a short week next week, at least on the Canadian side of the market, but for the U.S., it's kind of business as usual.
Kevin, your thoughts on the grain and oilseed markets this week?
Well, I just noticed one day where canola was down on the futures market by something like 25 or $27 a ton, and went, holy cow, what's happening? And then the next day it bounced up 15 or $17 a ton, and like Ryan said, it closed the week only down a little bit, but certainly some severe volatility. And in addition to the factors that Ryan mentioned, there's also American biofuel policy that's playing into this, with the intricacies of whether there will be more or less biofuel used in the years ahead, and that can also play into the market dynamics. But at the end of the day, what looked like canola was on a steep downhill slide, it recovered and was pretty steady on the week. So that's pretty good news.
And finally, Kevin, you had a chance to speak with a fellow by the name of Ben Voss, and I guess you touched on a number of subjects on that interview. And first of all, I guess it was regarding equipment prices and that sort of thing.
Yeah, all related to that. Ben Voss is an engineer with a long history working for a number of large and small equipment manufacturers. And when we see new equipment sales slump like they have in the last couple of years, usually we attribute it to the decline in farm income and lower grain prices. Well, grain prices are not terrible. Farm income has slipped a little bit, but he really believes there's a bunch of other factors involved right now in manufacturers pulling back and sales being down. One of them being that the large equipment being sold to producers that need and want that sort of equipment, the resale value is suffering because the next tier of producers maybe can't afford or don't need something as big or as expensive. So used equipment, especially used combines, are really dropped in price. So if you start penciling that into your cost equation and looking at what your trade-in value is going to be, it makes buying new look even less attractive. So that and the worry of obsolescence of the software on some of the new machines is also dampening some enthusiasm for the newest technology. So he's really believing that, and it's an interesting point of view that we need to be aware that there could indeed be a very structural change happening in the farm equipment industry as far as the number of new pieces of large equipment that are needed.
And that's going to do it for this week's edition of the SaskAgToday.com Roundtable. On behalf of the Chief Agricultural Editor for SaskAgToday.com, Kevin Hirsch, and 620 CKRM Regina Agri-News Director Ryan Young, I'm GX94 Yorkton Agriculture Director Doug Faulkner, saying so long until next time.